following program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.
Every day, citizens around the country are faced with new dilemmas that affect them profoundly. Whether it's injustice, discrimination, falling through the cracks, scandals and cronyism, balances of power, ethics, religious freedoms, state versus citizens, and unfunded mandates, and the list goes on and on and on. Welcome to Speak Up. It's directed at those who have fallen through the cracks, and it gives them a voice. It's your turn to speak up, to stand up and fight back.
Welcome to this episode of Speak Up. I'm Kevin Avard, your host, and today I'm joined with Catherine MacWillie, a former LA Police Department officer, approximately 28 to 30 years in law enforcement. And I want to welcome Catherine to the show. Welcome to the show.
Oh, great, Kevin. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Well, I was just reading a book by Ron and Sherry. I believe that Not in the Best Interest of the Child. And I thought we had a problem just here in New Hampshire. I think we've been living under a rock or something. This is a national problem, this problem of parental alienation syndrome.
Well, actually, the issues of family law are not really restricted to parental alienation. The entire issue of family law is a problem in the divorce process, both people with children and without children. And let me expand your horizons just a little bit more. The issue of divorce is a global problem. There's crime in every country, every civilized country dealing with divorce deals with custody issues, deals with crime, homicides, suicides, abductions. It's a global problem. And let me just correct you a little bit too. It was 24 years with LAPD, but I've been dealing with family law now close to 30 years, 6 years through my company. So just a little stickler for facts.
No, just the facts, right? Just the facts. Well, now, a lot of times you hear on the news or reports, that domestic violence is one of the banes of the existence for the police officers. It's the hardest cases for them to go into. How does the divorce and family law affect the police officers, say in LA?
Well, the issue of crime and family law, not just exclusively domestic violence, but child abuse investigations, child kidnappings, homicides, suicides, and so on. It's about 25% of the crime in this country. That's a pretty significant number, 25%.
And they're related to divorce cases or some family domestic problems?
What I did is, as a police officer, responding to radio calls and in detectives in my various assignments, I started noticing a correlation between crime and family law, not exclusive to just custody, not exclusive to just one area, but family law in its entirety. And 25%, I should clarify, is a best guess. And I say best guess because law enforcement does not track causative factors of crime. So we can't directly point our finger and say this is an accurate number. But when we look at some of the numbers dealing, for instance, with child abductions, we know that over a 10-year period of time, about 95% of all child abductions occur by a family member or someone known to the family, which means that you're really only talking about 5% by strangers. So if you take 95%, you factor in the majority, are related to family and family members. That's a pretty high statistic. And the same applies to a lesser degree to homicides. The majority of all homicides are committed by persons known to the family or, known to persons, and they're not committed by strangers, random acts of violence. So we use that as a basis, and I keep saying we because I really think of this as a collaborative effort by all the officers I interviewed, all the teachers, all the parents, all the different resources that I went to for information.
Right. Well, you're hearing it every day, but we just recently heard about this parent. His best friend took his daughter in camping after he killed. It's amazing what's going on here in this country with child abduction. And he had a crush on her or something, some weird thing. But here recently in New Hampshire, we had a shooting at a YWCA. I'm not really sure all the details yet. They haven't really come out, but apparently a father on a supervised visit ended up shooting his son and then himself. Again, family court issues. Is this the trend that we're seeing more and more around the country?
Well, as we were discussing just before we went into the taping, the investigation is still unfolding and we don't have a lot of the details yet. Right. But, what you have is many of us in law enforcement feel we're seeing an increase in the number of child homicides committed by parents in the ultimate act of revenge. You have the Facebook killer in Australia that posted that he was going to kill their daughter to get the bitch back, was his phrasing or something appropriate. And then after he committed the crime and killed his daughter, he posted again. He was ultimately convicted. And then, of course, you just had the recent headlines of another person who posted on Facebook a picture of the dead spouse. And let me clarify, too, that, the issue of children being murdered by their parents, it's not exclusive to one gender. You have mothers and fathers committing homicide against their children. It's the unthinkable crime, the crime that shocks everyone, neighbors, coworkers, who think, how is this possible? But it does. It happens more frequently than people realize.
I know that you were working with Sherry and Ron Palmer on ways to help in family court issues. You're working on some type of program or?
Well, here's what happened. As I was at a conference giving a presentation on this very issue, crime related to family law. It's very surprising to many people hearing it for the first time. And Sherry and Ron were in the audience and came up and said, you're definitely talking about things that we feel have been going on, and we'd like to do a section in the book related to why this should be what spurs us across the country to want to improve family law. People are literally creating homicide either before they enter the process, just over the fear of entering the process, and then, of course, during the process and even years later after custody and property and financial decisions are made. People are still committing crimes and homicides, stalking, domestic violence, child abuse, even years after the divorce.
Well, how do we fix this? I mean, there can't be a simple solution, but there's got to be at least a goal or a process to fix this. Do we have to educate the judges, the attorneys? Have them, I'm really not sure what the answer is.
Well, the aspect of being a police officer for so long means that I have a familiarity with the court systems. I certainly have a much wider view than many within the court system. Even judges, when I speak to them, and attorneys are surprised to hear that on some days and times, it's 100% of our radio calls, 100% for hours on end. Mother's Day, Father's Day, start of all vacations, Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, and so on. They're shocked to hear that the impact is so severe outside their courtroom, and then, of course, the 25% of crime. Approach this with a much wider view, and also having the background that, there's only so far training can take you.
Right.
And, just keeping up with the laws that are coming on the books and laws going off the books, and then all the reform conversation. Get rid of judges and put juries in place. Well, we don't have enough juries to handle all our criminal cases now. there's lots of reform issues being looked at, but no one is approaching it with the big picture as well as the small picture. So I think the first thing that has to happen is we need to get back to the basics of law with evidence and take evidence into.
I'm still here.
Oh, so we need to go back to the basics of law, and I think that's what Sherry and Ron did with their book. Is we're looking at the constitutional issues that we should be dealing with in family law and the parental rights guaranteed to us in the Constitution.
Can I just interrupt you really quick on this one point? What happens when the judges don't let you bring in the evidence? Supposing you have evidence that's withheld, or it changes from one court to another court. For instance, in New Hampshire, a case can go to 3 different courts, and one judge isn't looking at what the other judge did. We were working on Jared Stevens' case. We had Marital Master Love, we had Judge Ryan, and there was another judge, and one judge wasn't looking at what another judge was doing, and they want to take this child away from this fit father from New Hampshire and let it move to Las Vegas. And yet they didn't examine any of the evidence. And it kind of blows my mind, because we actually went to cover the hearing today. The Judge Moore wouldn't let us bring in our cameras. And it's a state law. We're allowed to bring in our cameras if you're a media. I guess what I'm trying to get at is you're talking about evidence. How do you force a judge to look at evidence?
Well, I think that what Ron and Sherry and how we're going to collaborate. It's a team that I'm putting together. I work with lobbyists in Washington, D.C. I've been involved in the international and domestic abduction issues with no-fly lists in a report that was issued to Congress. What we want to do is approach Congress, certain members of Congress, with this lobbyist, and get this book into their hands. And then what we would like to do is similar to what's been done in some other situations where the federal government came in and said, recognize the states' rights. However, there's precedence here that allows us to mandate certain actions. And, there's a lot of details that still need to be worked out. There's a lot of details about how this would be implemented, certainly a lot of steps before we get there. It's also a law professor, family law, and criminal court attorney, and a prior congressional candidate himself who's going to be involved. So there's long and short-term goals. You cannot approach this on just one issue alone. So it's going to have to be a multifaceted approach. I myself am in the process of final development of a software system that's all about putting in place and going at the core of some of these problems. Court orders are difficult to understand. Every judge phrases court orders differently. Every attorney phrases court orders differently. How do we correct that problem? Well, there are some corrections that don't require legislation, wouldn't require oversight by the federal government. It could be done at the state level, but we're just lacking final venture capital investment. And as you know, right now, it's very, very difficult because the economy has taken a turn for the worse and venture capital money is not as forthcoming. But there are some solutions that aren't as difficult. Sometimes the old additive of keep it simple, it really might be more applicable to family court than we realize. I've actually identified 8 factors that could be significant to improving the system, and then apply. That would give the application through Congress and that work that Sherry and Ron have done in their book, all part of the process that could be done at a higher level that might take longer to go in place with a more permanent solution and a collaboration of very successful ideas.
Right, and their book is not in the child's best interest. I had it on my...
Correct. Yes, it's available on Amazon. It's a very good book.
I just started reading it, and I was totally impressed. I actually take little clips from it, and I put it on my Facebook page because, I tweet some of their quotes. I'm not finished yet, obviously, but I'm seeing that this is a tool for people to embrace. you consider yourself a coach, if you will. I know, based on your, the divorce coach, if you will, something to that effect.
Yes.
And
Yes, the company offers several services. Divorce coach and workshops are part of them.
and at first blush, you go, oh my gosh, a divorce coach. In our society, well, it's a reality. Divorce is over 50% in our country, and when people are going into it, especially when they have children, they really have to look out for the children's best interest instead of letting those children be a tool of the court, and also surrendering your rights when you walk into that courtroom. Who'd have thunk that you walk into a courtroom? Who'd have thunk it? Who'd have thought that you walk into a courtroom and you automatically surrender your constitutional rights? That doesn't seem the place to do that.
Well, it was interesting, the conversation between the law professor and Ron and Sherry that took place recently. And, it really gave the law professor some things to look at differently about how much we're just accepting that's done in our court system that may actually be in violation that is in violation of our constitutional rights. But here's what happens, and I really want to make this point, is, there are a lot of very good people in the court system who really care about doing their job properly, who really care about the families and children that come in front of them. They want to do a good job, but what's happened is the system is so big, and it's become so convoluted, and we've sort of lost our way. The term "in the best interests of the children" has really been distorted. And a phrase I often utilize is, there's been more harm done in the best interest of children unintentionally than ever could have been done intentionally.
I think we were talking off camera, actually it was on the phone before this interview at one point, and I expressed to you that it was my understanding that in some of these cases, judges only have about 20 minutes to go over a particular family court issue, and you thought that was an awful gracious number. You experienced even worse than that.
Oh yeah, I think you have court systems in different parts of the country that, they probably are in the single digits to review paperwork. So it's skimmed at the most. You have 200 names on a docket or 150 names in a docket, and you have, first call, second call, where everybody stands up and says who's ready. And that time frame reduces itself even further. In some parts of the country, like San Francisco, you're being told it'll be 5 years before you can even hear your divorce right now. In other parts of the country, it will take 6 to 9 months just to get a signature on a court order after the divorce. In fact, I had a client recently in California where they finalized their divorce in December, and they just got their signed court order this month, August, just for a signature. That's after the court hearings. We're closing about 15 to 25% of our civil courts because of government cutbacks. So add all the problems and then the cutbacks, and you just have, an equation that just screams misery to everyone entering it, including the people in it who work there.
Our country is sick. We're hurting. We're hurting. If our courts are that flooded with divorce, there's that much dissension in the family. We got to save the families for one, but I think also, that breaks my heart to think that they're that flooded. And the children are caught in the crossfire, no doubt. I just am amazed. And I know that some judges, when they're looking at this show, they're thinking we're their enemy, and we're not. We understand that there's a burden there, but there's also, on the other side, the people that are the victims. We're hearing stories where, men and women, I just don't understand it. I've never committed a crime, and I've not seen my child. What's going on? How can you do this? And then they get belligerent, they get angry, and it just starts the cycle. And everybody thinks there's a conspiracy. The judges are thinking, well, you don't know what's going on. My caseload. I just think that, having sat on the redress committee, and speaking with, actually it was even Judge Moore, Judge Paul Moore, he thought we were invading his space because we were examining the evidence that was coming before our committee. We actually had more time, I guarantee, to look at all the evidence than that judge did. We spent weeks on a particular case. And I wonder if the judges are feeling threatened because we're trying to offer a solution, and the parents are thinking there's a conspiracy against them and the lawyers are making all kinds of money, and there's a lot of this going on. I don't know if you're experiencing what.
Well, yeah, you have people that make $10 an hour, and they're being required to pay for their attorney, the minor's attorney or guardian ad litem, or both, a parenting evaluation, a reunification counselor, court fees. I mean, we're looking at $1,400 an hour for some of these parents as a financial burden to either seeing their children, keeping their children, or being a part of their children's lives, and they make $10 an hour. It's a financial burden and emotional burden that's unfair that the courts have placed on parents. Now, the courts intended for this to be a measure by which people could exercise custody or be a part of their child's life. They were looking at it as a remedy, but what they've done is pile on burden after burden after burden so that we've distorted what was supposed to be a solution to another problem.
Should the courts be more accountable to the people?
I think we always need to be, government always needs to be accountable to the people, always. But on the other hand, so do people need to be accountable to the government. You know, we cannot just hand over the responsibility for government to manage our every aspect of our life. That was not the intention of government. And we need to be proactive. And, you know, just like in any private enterprise or government enterprise, oversight is never viewed as necessarily a positive motion, but it is in fact necessary. It is, in fact, necessary because it's very easy to lose your way, no matter if you're a CEO of a private corporation or, you know, head of an agency in the government.
Do you think you can find some time to come back on our show and talk a little bit more in depth as to, you know, some of these solutions that their book talks about, not in the child's best interest, and maybe some other topics?
Yeah, Ron and Sherry are best to be ones to talk about their books, but definitely perhaps the next time we're on available, we'll be able to give a website address that people will be able to go to for that program that we were in the process of developing, but I would welcome the opportunity. Could I just give my website address
Oh,
for
absolutely.
people to get some information on the company?
You cannot leave the show without doing that. Before you do that, though, I wanted to ask you one other question. Mike Williamson? Sherry and Ron told me to mention his name.
Give me the name again.
Mike Williamson?
Mike is the law professor that I was speaking about previously. He's also a family and criminal law attorney and also a congressional candidate. Several times he'll be running for Congress again. He's very, very active, involved in wanting to push through some of the discussions and reforms that we really need to address in family law. And really, I'm not so sure it's reform is really just getting back to the basics, just about operating ourselves differently.
Right. And what is your website?
It's Custody Calculations. That's CUSTODY calculations.com. And the divorce coach hotline number is 702-675-5120. And we do coaching all around the United States, including internationally as well.
And do you speak to lawyers and judges, too, to try to educate them on remedies, on how to streamline the process, if you will?
Well, actually, I just attended the AFCC conference, which is the largest education organization within the family law court system. They just had their 50-year anniversary in California, and I did attend, and I did network. It's a wonderful organization. Again, its goals are all about education, and with any luck, Ron, Sherry, Mike, and I will be presenting at future conferences when we put everything together, along with the lobbyists, too.
Keep us in mind, the Center for Redress of Grievances. We'd love to be a part of that as well.
Oh, sounds great. Welcome all the help we can get.
Well, we look forward to the next interview with you. And any final thoughts that you have? If there's one thing you want to leave people with.
Yeah, I do. You know, it's not your parents' divorce where outcomes were predetermined. In today's divorce process, you cannot afford to enter the system naive or uneducated. We tell people in today's divorce, you can lose your children, your home, your job, your career. You can even go to jail. Very important.
We've seen every one of those.
Yes.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate because it's happening to good people.
Happens to a lot of people
Right.
and children.
And
Thank you so much.
And one more time on the website, it's called
custodycalculations.com.
Great. Well, thank you for joining us on Speak Up, and we look forward to the next interview. And thank you for watching Speak Up, and we hope this information is helpful. We're trying to provide links and get more people that are involved with the solutions rather than just, we hear the problems over and over and over again. We want to provide the solutions. So thank you, and if you have any intention on calling, call as soon as you can. Until next week. Thank you for watching this episode of Speak Up. We also want to thank our sponsor, Center for Redress of Grievances, LLC. You can reach them at www.centerforredress.com. If you want more information about Speak Up or want to be a guest, you have something to say, contact us at speakupnh@gmail.com. And thanks for watching. Until next week. Every day, citizens around the country are faced with new dilemmas. Dilemmas that affect them profoundly. Whether it's injustice, discrimination, falling through the cracks, scandals and cronyism, balances of power, ethics, religious freedoms, state versus citizens, and unfunded mandates, and the list goes on and on and on. Welcome to Speak Up. It's directed at those who have fallen through the cracks, and it gives them a voice. It's your turn to speak up. To stand up and fight back.
The preceding program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.